Aram Sheibani was one of UK's most deceitful kingpins with a portfolio of £5 million, or $6.7 million. He wasn't just wealthy either, he was myth-making. The illusion of his wealth was his greatest weapon. It gave him credibility, access, and most importantly, invisibility. In the world of white-collar crime, nothing hides better than success. He was a property investor with a sleek aesthetic, a man who pulled up in Bentleys, hung original pieces all over his walls, and curated all of his social media to look straight out of Luxury Life magazine. He posted from exclusive beach clubs in Marbella. His neighbors in Bowdon, Greater Manchester, just saw a man that dressed nice and enjoyed the finer things of life. What they didn't see is the growing shadow beneath the shine. Behind that curated Instagram profile was one of the UK's most shifty criminal empires. Aram Sheibani didn't build his wealth through hard work or clever investing. His empire was crafted with forged documents, shell companies, and encrypted silence. His wealth came from three core streams: mortgage fraud, property-based money laundering, and large-scale cocaine trafficking. For 2 decades, he operated without any known employer, no tax returns, and no traceable income. He had no legitimate business records, and he had no explanation of where his millions came from. Everything he did was hidden by offshore nominees and layers of false identities. His empire was a castle built on shifting paper, and it worked for a while. Sheibani's story begins not with drugs, but deception. Between 1999 and 2010, he only declared earnings 5 times, and in every instance, it was a mortgage application. Those applications were filled with lies. Doctor pay slips, falsified employment records, and counterfeit P60s. He wasn't earning the salaries that he claimed, but the banks didn't know that. With these false records, Sheibani was able to secure high-value loans, convincing lenders that he was a successful businessman. He used those loans to buy properties in Manchester, London, and Marbella. But here was his trick. Those properties were rarely, if ever, in his name. He used friends, family, and even unaware associates as fronts. Once the deal was done, ownership would quietly shift back to him through internal transfers. On paper, it looked like someone else owned the property, but Sheibani held the keys. This was the beginning of what investigators would call laundering through architecture. He wasn't just buying homes, no, he was crafting a financial mask. Every property had layers of deception: hidden ownership, forged income, fake identities. One flat in Kingston worth £1.7 million appeared under his control without any signs of payment. Another flat was purchased with cash through a third-party vendor. There were no tenants, no leases, and no tax returns. The properties were investments. They were vaults and safe houses and vehicles for laundering criminal profits. The paper trail was nearly impossible to follow, and that was by design. He had built a system where everything looked just legitimate enough to pass. While his real estate empire grew, Sheibani made a fateful shift. Next, he moved into high-level drug trafficking, and this is where his ambitions became more clear. Sheibani didn't touch street-level deals. He dealt in bulk, importing high-purity cocaine from Colombia, and then distributing it through high-level UK networks. The breakthrough came for investigators when they began analyzing his travel records. Between 2012 and 2015, he made frequent trips to Amsterdam, Dubai, and Marbella. But it was a December 2013 trip to Colombia that raised flags. There were no photos, no check-ins, and no evidence on social media. Completely out of character. For a man who documented every cocktail and every hotel room, this was definitely speculative. Colombia, long known as a source of high-purity cocaine, also wasn't a coincidence. Investigators believe Sheibani went there to meet suppliers, establish trust, and set up import routes. And after this trip, everything changed. He began purchasing industrial-grade equipment: vacuum sealers, gloves, acetone, and packing materials. They weren't for personal use. This was the infrastructure of a wholesale drug operation. Sheibani was obsessed with control. His digital footprint was locked behind a fortress of encryption. He used Encrochat for military-grade encryption and remote wipe capabilities. His alias was Iron Key. He operated multiple encrypted phones, some of which were destroyed or flushed during police raids. He ran his operation like a professional enterprise. Properties were turned into repackaging centers. Inside, the police found cash counting machines, industrial sealers, and cocaine stored inside safes. The digital records were scattered across devices, crypto wallets, and offshore accounts, each layer adding another degree of separation between Sheibani and all of his crimes. He curated his lifestyle with the precision of a luxury brand. Rolex watches, designer suits, and cosmetic surgery were all part of the show. In Los Angeles, he spent over £45,000 on a hair transplant surgery. He lived in high-end apartments in Bowdon and Kingston. He drove a Porsche Panamera and 2 Bentleys. His social media was a highlight of yachts, rooftops, and 5-star hotels. Never once did he post an office, a business partner, or even a day at work. Just movement, luxury, and leisure. To his friends, it was enviable. To investigators, it was more suspicious. The illusion began to crack when the Greater Manchester's Police Economic Crime Unit started digging into his financial records. HMRC records showed almost no taxable income on this guy. He had no taxable job, yet he had millions in assets. Luxury properties, expensive artwork, and a lot of traveling. None of this really matched his supposed income. Investigators began mapping his entire life, his transactions, his flight history, everything. One piece of the puzzle stood out to them: his trip to Colombia. That, combined with his purchases of drug packing supplies, led to something bigger. And as they began to dig into his encrypted devices, they began to discover some things. Crypto wallets loaded with over £1.5 million, fake documents, and shell company ownerships. On April 9th, 2019, the illusion finally shattered. At 6 a.m., a coordinated raid between GMP and national units hit multiple properties linked to Sheibani. The primary focus was his penthouse in Bowdon. It was a converted church marketed as executive living. As soon as the police entered, Sheibani was in the bathroom trying to flush down a encrypted Encrochat phone. He was arrested in his boxer shorts. Inside, they found over £60,000 in cash, crypto recovery phrases, designer goods, and cocaine. Simultaneously, police raided his Kingston flat, uncovering what they called a party box, filled with ecstasy, MDMA, and more encrypted devices. The courtroom was quiet. Sheibani offered no defense, no remorse, and no explanation. He denied all the charges, but he refused to explain how he lived a multi-million-dollar lifestyle without any legitimate job. The jury saw forged mortgage documents, fake bank statements, safety deposit boxes filled with cash, and thousands of incriminating digital files. In total, Sheibani was convicted on 20 different charges, including conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, fraud by false representation, and money laundering. The judge called him a career criminal who had built his entire life on lies. He was sentenced to 34 years in prison, plus another 3 years because the dude refused to unlock any of his encrypted devices. A total of 37 years behind bars. In April of 2024, the court invoked the Proceeds of Crime Act, demanding that Sheibani pays back £3.4 million in criminal gains. He had 3 months to comply or face another 10 years in prison. The police had already seized all of his homes, all of his luxury cars, and over £1.5 million in cryptocurrency. But this was about more than just money. It was about dismantling the myth. The court ruled that every dime that Sheibani had earned was tied to crime. Nothing about this guy's lifestyle was even legitimate. His empire was a carefully constructed fraud, and now it was being unraveled piece by piece. Today, Aram Sheibani sits in a high security prison. The Bentleys are gone, the yachts, the suits, the private surgeries, all stripped away. What remains now is the story of a man who fooled banks, friends, and society for nearly 2 decades. But no lie lasts forever. Sheibani believed that his wealth, his silence, and his encrypted fortress would keep him untouchable. Instead, it became his undoing. He constructed a perfect illusion, but every illusion eventually meets truth. And when it did, the empire crumbled. Let his story be a warning. No amount of encryption and no amount of luxury can protect you from the consequences of deception.